everyone, I am Talisa with Talisa Aquarist, and today I'm going to be going over a list of 12 plants that you can keep in your aquarium that are nearly impossible to kill. If you are thinking about getting a planted aquarium and you don't even know what plants to start with, well, hopefully this list is helpful to you. These 12 plants that you can keep in your aquarium do not require CO2. They do not require a nutrient-rich substrate, and they do not require an expensive aquarium light for keeping plants alive. You can plunk them in most any tank, and they are going to, they may not thrive, but they're not going to die. They may thrive depending on the tank, but I about guarantee you they're not going to die on you. So the first plant that I'm going to talk about is duckweed. Super obvious, I know. But because it is nearly impossible to kill, obviously it has to be on this list. I'm going to go over the reasons I actually like duckweed. I know most of you don't have anything good to say about it, but I actually do appreciate duckweed. It really helps keep the tank clean. It helps prevent algae in the tank because not only does it pull nutrients from the water, it also helps cover the surface of the water, which helps less light get to the plants, which means you're a lot less likely to get an algae outbreak. And it also helps prevent water evaporation. And the second plant is anubius, also another super obvious plant. As I go down the list, there's going to be some less obvious plants that some of you guys have probably actually never even heard of. But the second one on my list is anubius. Anubius is great. You do not want to plant it in your substrate. You just want to either glue it to a rock, glue it to some wood, stick it to the side of your tank with a suction cup, something. The roots will actually feed from the water column itself. They do not feed from the substrate, and it will actually kill the plant if you put it in substrate. And the third plant on my list is sword plants. I started out, I think one of my very first plants actually was a sword plant. And I just had some gross looking colored gravel in a tank, no nutrients at all in the substrate for this plant to grow. I didn't know about root tabs or sand or aqua soil. I didn't know about cycling tanks. I just plunked this sword right in the gravel, and it didn't grow very well because of the things I listed. I just didn't have a good substrate. But it did not die. So you could put this plant in any tank with sand or gravel. Even if it doesn't have a lot of nutrients in the substrate, it may not grow very well at first, but it's not going to die either, and I didn't have a good light on the tank either. And that sword was very hardy. Now, it took a few years to really start picking up and growing because at that point the gravel had enough fish poop in it that it was healthy. But this sword plant did very well for me, and this is a plant that I love to keep in my aquarium still today. Another really cool thing about sword plants is they will grow out of the top of your tank. Like, the leaves will shoot out of the top and they don't die. So then you just have like this plant growing out of the top of your aquarium, and it looks kind of neat. And the fourth plant, this is not necessarily an aquarium plant, but you can keep it in your aquarium. And that is pothos. You can get a pothos plant and you can wash the substrate off of the roots and you can put the roots in your aquarium, or you can take a clipping from a pothos you already have and you can just put the clippings in the top of your tank. I put mine in like little boxes that I can either suction cup to the side of the tank or hook on the side of the tank, and they will grow a good root system and pull nutrients up out of the water, and they're just really cool looking. You can have the vines growing up the wall or just have them hanging down from the side of the tank, and it just looks super neat. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the fifth plant that I would like to recommend is Bucephalandra, also known as Buce. It is a very hardy plant, and it's also really beautiful. Now, this plant is very slow growing, but it doesn't require a lot of light. You can glue it to either rocks or driftwood. Like anubius, you do not want to plant this in your substrate in your tank. So even if you have a tank with no substrate, this is a plant that is great for you. You can just glue it to some hardscape. It stays pretty small. It grows very slowly, but it's very easy to keep alive. And the sixth plant that I would like to mention is Dwarf Sag, also known as Dwarf Sagittaria. It kind of looks like a medium-sized grass that you could put in your aquarium. It sort of resembles grass. It's going to be kind of like mid-ground to background, depending on how tall your tank is. You could plant it in the back or in the mid-ground. And this stuff is extremely hard to kill. It's very hardy, and it just grows like crazy. It will throw off runners and give you lots of new plants all the time. Like if you plant this in your aquarium, if you don't want your aquarium to look like an absolute jungle, you're going to be pulling out new starts all the time. It is a great plant. I grow it in most of my aquariums, and when I set up a new aquarium, I just pull some out of an old tank and plunk it in the new aquarium, and I don't have to buy it anymore. So I do love that plant for that reason, and it also just looks cool, you know. And after that, my next, I don't remember what number I'm on, I forgot, but the next plant that I would recommend is Jungle Vallisneria, also known as Jungle Val. Now this plant can grow very tall and actually cover the surface of the tank if you don't keep it trimmed. It's a very hardy plant that you can keep in with goldfish, and I have not kept it just like in gravel with no nutrient rich soil, but I've seen other people keep it in tanks and it did great for them. It does great in my tanks as well, but I do have a nutrient rich soil. But I think this is a plant that most aquarists would tell you could just plunk in sand or gravel that is not rich with nutrients, and it will grow like crazy for you. This is a plant you'd want to have in the background or the corners of your tank, and it will grow an insane amount. And next is Crypts. I know this probably isn't a plant you expected to be on the list, but I love my crypt plants. That was also another one of the first plants that I bought was a crypt, and I just put it in my gravel, and it grew really well. And I still to this day use lots of crypts. Some of them can grow fairly large, some of them stay medium, but I think they're beautiful, and they just kind of look like a nice bush or something in your tank. And the next plant I would recommend is guppy grass. Guppy grass grows like an insane rate. It's a stem plant. It doesn't need to be pushed into substrate. You can plant it in the substrate, or you can just plunk it in your tank and it will take over your tank. And it's just like a nice wispy looking plant. It just looks beautiful, I think. Now you do have to keep it trimmed back if you don't want it taking over your whole tank. I got some free off of Facebook from someone. They had a tank and it just completely overtook their tank, and they didn't like it, so they pulled it out and they just gave it to me for free. And I have enough of that, like, I will never have to buy guppy grass because it just grows at such a crazy rate. And after that, another plant you guys probably don't expect to see on this list is a banana plant. Banana plants, in my experience, I haven't kept them for a long time, but they don't need planted in the substrate. So once again, you can just put it in any tank, whether it has substrate or not. And it will grow out roots that will root down into the substrate if you have substrate. But I just, when you buy it, you just put it on top of the substrate. And mine has grown and done very well. It's very hardy. And I think they're just a really cool looking plant as well. And the next one, well, this is the last plant actually. The last plant on my list, the 12th plant that I would recommend is bamboo. You can put it at the surface of the water in like little containers where it will grow roots and feed from the water column, or you can push it all the way down into the substrate and have the tops coming out of the tank like I have done with this fishbowl, and it will grow really well. So another plant you can just put in your tank. You don't want the leaves to be down in the water. You want the top of the bamboo plant to be out of the top of the tank. So if you have a really short bamboo stick and a tall tank, I would recommend putting it in a container on the side of the tank. but I like getting the really tall pieces, and you can just stick it down in the substrate and the roots feed from the substrate, and then you just have this bamboo coming out of the top of your tank. I think it looks really neat. If this video was helpful to you, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching.